Sandlan. Oh, hold on. It's got it. Yeah, I'm Charlie Sandlan. I'm the master teacher and artistic director, former classmate of Quinn Mander, and I own the Maggie Flanagan Studio in New
Yep,
York
in
City.
New York City. Yeah.
2-year Meisner training program.
Yep. And Charlie is one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life.
Oh, come
He's a
on.
fabulous
Don't,
teacher. No, that's true, man.
please.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. We held our own.
Yeah. Against insurmountable odds sometimes.
Absolutely, man.
Like. Yeah. It was through the gauntlet. But what I wanted to talk to you about was, as I sort of tried to introduce Meisner exercises and the stuff that we learned together at Rutgers to some students of mine, there's been a lot of questions and there's been some confusion, and I'm learning as a teacher still. I think of it as a very collaborative thing, particularly since I'm learning to be a teacher.
100%.
I got to meet them where they are and sort of try to figure out individually, okay, what does a student need? Like what's not connecting for them and how do I meet them? But a lot of it starts off right from the beginning with repetition. A lot of them sort of feel like, the intention of Meisner is to suck you into the moment, right? Into truthful, honest, moment to moment contact, unanticipated, out of your head, totally out of your head. What I find happens with them often is that they get really focused on the rules of the repetition. And there's like 4, like there's not a lot of rules. And I'm sorry, that sounds dismissive at all, but it's, and I don't mean
it. But I have my students do the same thing. They think of them as rules, Oh, Charlie said they can't ask why, or don't use the word don't, or if you use okay, it's like shrugging your shoulders and they're up there and it's like they self-monitor themselves.
Yeah.
And you just have to, they're guidelines. It's not a rule.
Yeah.
It's not intellectual things. You're not splitting the atom here. You're just learning how to listen, how to work off people, how to see subtext. And these are guidelines. But yes, my students have the same issue. They think of it as rules.
Right. How do you address it when?
Just like that, I say, listen, listen. See, these are guidelines. It's not a rule. I'm not going to waterboard you. I'm just going to stop you and tell you, listen, don't ask why. It's not important. And as long as you can work on breathing and taking in and responding for how you feel and try to get more direct and more honest about how you're feeling in moments, don't worry about it.
The best summary that I ever heard from Maggie was really, what do you see and how do you feel about it?
That's it. At the end of the day, that's it. And it's this journey of kind of calling what you see, pointing it out like a reporter in an objective way, and then getting from being objective to more subjective and more direct. And, but that door work is hard, man. It's, as you know, it's the most difficult part of the training. Very difficult. And it takes months.
It does. Well, it's one of the challenges that I've found is that there's not a lot of familiarity with Meisner out here. And people
I would think, yeah.
It's hard for them to get people to really commit to what it takes to do the training. At first I tried to break it up into 10-week sessions. Like, the intention was 10-week part 1, 10-week part 2, which was the first year roughly, and then part 3 and 4. It was hard to sort of track people through. But it takes a long time, in some of the sort of fundamentals of acting classes that I teach, I introduce repetition, right? But it's, in a couple of classes, you can't, it's really hard for them to practice it enough,
Yeah, not in a couple of classes. Even like, when I do a 6-week summer intensive, right? They get 18 classes. So that takes them up through what would be those first round scenes. It just gives them a taste. They just start to get a sense and are woken up to the art form and how hard it is. But like, it takes months. That's why it takes, I think first year is good, 64, 65 classes. That's
yeah, it is. It's a lot. It takes a lot of
number.
commitment. It's what's one thing I want to ask you about. What I had started doing, and I want to hear your feedback on this about how you do this. Like when I introduce the repetition exercise, what I ask them to do right off the bat, and I want to know if this actually is maybe undermining the training, is I ask them to really, from the very beginning, connect with a point of view rather than just, like, you have a blue shirt, like, you like it, you don't like it, have an opinion about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've found that it's the easiest way to get them to start to understand the emotional logic that this is supposed to capture,
Mm-hmm.
right? Back and
Mm-hmm.
forth. But I wonder, from your experience, is that too soon? Like, do you start with, you talked about more objective contact at first.
Well, I mean, I go bit by bit, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
first class, when I'm introducing the repetition, and I'm repeating with every single one of them the way Maggie did
Right.
with us in that first class, I say the first thing I want you to do is I want you to repeat exactly what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just start with that. And so I'll
Right.
say, "You've got long hair," and they'll repeat, "You've got long hair." And I'll say, "No,
Right.
you've got long hair." And
Do the pronoun change, yeah.
Right. And then I say, "Okay, good, you did exactly what I said. What's untruthful about that?"
Right.
And so I introduced the first change. I try to get them just with the changing that honest answer. Just get the pronouns right. You've got a blue shirt on. I've got a blue shirt on. Yeah, you've got a blue shirt. Yeah, I've got. So that all puts them in their head there just in day one, because it's like they've never used the English language before, and
Right.
they have no idea about pronouns.
Yeah.
So that after about one class, they've got that right, and then immediately I get into. I'll repeat with them, and I'll say, "You've got a white shirt. Yeah, you've got a white shirt. You've got a white shirt. Yeah, I know, that's what I said." Right. And that piling up starts to
The
happen.
piling up.
And I'll say, "Okay, did you see how I changed that?" I introduced the piling up. I said, so the first thing they've got to understand is that you got to treat it as a reality.
Right.
You've got to answer responsibly, and you've got to hold on to the repetition. And so the second class, when they start talking, some of them will do it instinctively.
Right.
And I'll wait until it kind of happens. Some people will get up there and say, "You're wearing glasses. I'm wearing glasses. You're wearing glasses." And then someone's going to get up there and go, "You look like my dad." "I look like your dad. You look like my dad." And so I'll have a couple of examples, and I'll say to them, "Well, what's the difference between you look like my dad and you're wearing gold earrings?"
Right.
Or you look like a surfer and you've got cowboy boots on. And then the discussion is, well, one's an opinion, one's a point of view, and then we talk about how important point of view is and how that's really what makes you an artist. And then I say, well, that can go in the first moment. So right now, when you start with a point of view.
Right.
So you get those first three changes kind of rolled out over the first 2 or 3 classes, and then after they do that, then you start the behavior. You start pointing out the behavior change.
Right.
What's going on in the other person's behavior, and then okay, well, now what's your point of view? How do you feel about it? So it's kind of like a progression. But yeah, in terms of like getting that subjective, second class.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I've struggled the most to kind of communicate with them is that piling up, like really sort of explaining to them what that
if you
is.
If you treat it as reality and you answer responsibly, how many times can you repeat the same thing before
Exactly.
it's just going to pile up organically? You're not thinking about it. Like, yeah, okay, already. Yeah, I get it.
Right.
And then the question is, well, what's the meaning of that? The other person's repeating. Oh, in the very basic level. Oh, you're getting frustrated. You're getting, I'm bothering you. And it just starts there. But yeah, they're in their head. And what I just keep saying to them is, listen, it's not intellectual. Art is not intellectual. You're going to struggle to try to figure this out up here, and you're not going to figure it out up here. You're going to figure it out by doing.
Yeah.
And half the time when they ask me questions, I'll just say, I'm not answering that. It's too heady.
Yeah.
Just don't answer all their questions. Don't answer other questions. And I say that in the first class, I say, listen, you're probably going to have questions, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not answering that. It's too intellectual. And you're going to get pissed because you're going to want an answer, and you're going to want to try to understand something. And it's not about up here.
Yeah.
And so half the time I'll say, go, well, can I? No, it's too heady. I'm not answering that. Just no.
Well, and I guess that goes.
You go down a rabbit hole. You can go down a rabbit hole answering all the fucking questions.
Oh yeah, no, and that's like why questions are dangerous, because then you're asking somebody to provide a narrative, not how I feel about what your response was, right? Not how you're talking to me, not your subtext, right?
Right.
Yeah. What I want you to talk, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about, like, because you touched on this, that acting and all art, I think, really, even art that seems intellectual, is not, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
It may access intellectual tools, but that's not the point, and particularly acting.
No, the best art's personal. It illuminates the human condition.
Right.
And
it's from here. It's from the gut.
And depending on the art form, depending on the medium, how you express yourself, that's whether it's a dancer in the body, it's a painter with her brushes and canvas, right? A sculptor with clay or metal or whatever, that a poet with pen and paper. The actor, it's the totality of who you are. It's your body, your voice, your temperament, your imagination. It's everything. It's all of you.
Right.
Which makes it a particularly challenging, vulnerable, risky art form, because you're putting your soul on the line and you're doing it in front of people.
This is your instrument. You don't have an
and you're
thing.
doing it in front of people. You're not in your bedroom
Right.
on your bed, jotting down a poem, or in your private studio painting. You're putting your soul on the line in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people.
And getting a reaction immediately.
Absolutely.
And you can't hide from your response to it.
Yeah. Like, and if you're not willing to work in a personal way, if you're not, as an actor, working in an experiential way, then why should anybody watch you?
Right. Yeah.
That's and they know this. They know it as an audience member. I'm like, when do you come to life as an audience member? It's when you're watching the human experience unfold.
And that's one of the. I got in this big argument with a director friend of mine who I really respect. Both as an actor and a director in so many ways. But he is particularly suspicious of what he, quote unquote, techniques.
Right.
And I was talking to him a little bit about the Meisner process, and he was directing me in Henry V, Henry IV and Henry V, and I was playing Hal, and I was trying to get my hands around this one scene, and I was trying to work with him on some of the, the actions, the internal life, the preparation, all of that sort of stuff. Like, what's the internal life, so that I can get a handle on one of the monologues. Mm-hmm. And he got frustrated with me. And he was like, none of that matters. The audience can't tell. And it's the crux of the difference between the way a lot of people view acting and art and theater in general, or film and TV work.
Yeah, but what someone like that doesn't get or doesn't appreciate is that when you see really great, vivid behavior on stage or on camera, that is a direct result of crafting. And the actors that you watch that are general, that just have conversational reality, that aren't doing anything, the reason why they're bad is because they're not crafting. The lay person, or somebody who's not a crafts person of the art form, isn't going to necessarily understand why that's bad.
Right. But
they just know it's bad.
Exactly. And that was my point.
A well-trained actor will know why it's bad. I can tell you exactly why it's bad.
Right.
I remember going to the opera with somebody who's very Victoria Mastrobuono when she was alive, right? Yeah. I go to opera all the time with her. She was an aficionado when it came to opera. And I would sit there and we'd sit there together, and I'd be watching something and I'd just think, oh, this is really lovely. And I'd look at her and she'd go, this is bad. It's really bad. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? And she would point out to me, did you see she didn't hold that note long enough? Did you hear the vibrato in her? Right. That shouldn't be there. And all these little things that to the layperson, didn't understand. It's the same with acting.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I wanted to comment on, which might be a little different, that this director friend of mine was trying to talk about, it was insulting to the audience. They're never going to know. And my experience with other people and with myself as an audience member, absolutely they know. Even if you're really good, really, really good as a technical actor at faking it or at indicating or at any of that stuff, watching it, And the difference is somebody will look at that and go, that's a brilliant technical performance. Like he's really good at what he does. And they'll come away with a high opinion of the actor. And if they're really sucked into the story, if there's a real human experience happening, you forget about the acting. You're watching the story unfold. You're watching.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, an audience, absolutely. An audience is only going to experience what the actors on stage or on camera are experiencing. That's how you live vicariously through a performance. And if the actors aren't experiencing anything, the audience isn't going to experience anything. They'll hear the play, they'll hear the words, but they're not going to be moved in any way.
No, they'll understand. They may understand the arc of the story and have an intellectual response to it, but that's not the point of acting.
No.
No.
And the reason why people train seriously is because they have a vision of the type of actor and the type of acting they want to do and the artistry of it. But that's got to be something that you're interested in, you know, or why put yourself through this kind of training? It's very difficult.
Talk a little bit more about the aspect of crafting. Like, what is it? You know, and obviously this is an entire novel.
It's everything.
Multiple novels. But specifically, what are the most important pieces of crafting at a beginning level that a person who's just learning acting needs to begin to grasp as they start to learn how to craft a character?
Crafting is everything. You will never be better than your crafting as an actor. And the three things that an actor needs to be able to do is to craft simply, personally, and specifically.
Right.
And if you craft in a general way, you're going to have general behavior. And so pinning down those fundamental questions, previous circumstance, you know, how do you feel about it? What's the acting relationship? What's my objective? And then being able to work out actions, line intentions, and all of that homework. The key is to craft simply. You're never going to be asked to be complicated as an actor. Your job is to take complicated material and break it down into something that's easily stated, something that tells you exactly what you're going to do and that you can and ultimately repeat.
Right.
You know? And so the training, Meisner's first year work is about, okay, how do I craft in a simple, specific, and personal way? How do I harness my ability to daydream and fantasize to my craft as an actor?
Yeah.
And you have to learn that. You know, I mean, that's something that I don't think, unless you're a savant of the art form and you're just like, you know, like a Mozart of acting world, like you need to learn how to do it.
Yeah. You know? I think a lot of people come to acting to sort of feel like, you know, it's certainly talent is important, but they either sort of feel like you have it or you don't. There's nothing to learn. If you have to go to school, then you're no good. And they feel
talent's
like everything
great to
will
have,
just come to them.
Yeah, but you know this. There are a lot of really untalented people that have incredible careers.
Right.
Because they have an interesting look. They have conversational reality. They bust their ass. You know, I don't know. Talent to me is, it doesn't really mean much. Like it's just how hard do you work? How hard do you work?
The craft itself. And do you care about it enough to do that? Do you actually care about being a craftsperson?
Yeah. And so when I get students that start here in first year, you didn't do this when we were in school, even now, when you're teaching. Some people just aren't up for it. Like it's just not, they're just not up for it. Like you've got to really fucking want to do this with your life. It's got to be something that you're really fascinated, passionate about, consumed by, or you won't do it. You quit.
Right. I remember, you know, you won't stay up until 3 a.m. trying to find that perfect daydream. You know,
yeah. And the best actors, and this is with anything, the best artists are obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
They're obsessed. And if you're not obsessed, it's not the life path for you. Go do something that you are obsessed about.
Yeah, you might even develop a pretty good career, but it's not going to be fulfilling. You know, the test to me is, are you fulfilled whether or not you're successful? You know,
and by successful meaning, is this a 30-year career?
Right.
You know, I was looking at some stats and I didn't know this. I thought this was pretty amazing. Only 30% of all the actors in professional unions book a second job. And less than 1% of all the actors in all of the unions book 30 jobs over the course of their career.
Yeah. Wow.
Less than 1%. That was like on an IMDb kind of a stat article. And that blew me away.
Yeah.
You know, because you think, how many people do you know that like you booked that under 5, that's 4 lines on Law and Order, that first gig, and you think, here we go. And only 30%.
Yeah.
book a second professional job. The odds are really hard, man. And when you're competing at a high level, this is what they don't understand. You're competing against people who are obsessed. You're competing against people who are coming out of NYU, Yale, UCSD, Juilliard, the top MFA programs, BFA programs, programs like my studio, right? That's who you're competing against. You better have a way of working.
Yeah.
You better have a way of working. You better have an instrument that's open and pliable, a voice that's resonant and vibrant, and a technique, or you won't have a career. And if you're not willing to give it 10 years, like really give it 10 years, highs,
putting in
lows,
that kind
good,
of work,
put in a decade before you call it quits, before you say, I gave it a shot. You got to give it a decade, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah, it requires a lot of sacrifices.
It does, absolutely.
It really does.
An artistic life requires a tremendous amount of sacrifice. You know this. I mean, fuck, man. It requires everything. And that's why I tell them, if there's anything else that you love to do or want to do, go do it. Be happy at the end of the day. Be happy.
There's two things you talked about: simplicity, and one of the best ways that I've heard you before describe simplicity is that what you want actors, if you're really trying to craft, you start with a lot of hopefully risk-taking choices. There's a lot of stuff that you play and try out, and ultimately it's all too much. But your job as an actor, one of your jobs as an actor, is to pare down and pare down and pare down until you're left with only the behavior that is necessary to tell the story of that character's point of view, and nothing else.
Listen, look at the best actors. They do only what they need to do, no more, no less. You don't see extraneous, unconscious, pedestrian clutter.
Right.
You don't. It's all stripped away. And when actors are training and when they're starting out, they've got a lot of unconscious clutter. They're doing a lot of physical shit they aren't even aware of. It's isms that are part of how habitual things that they do in life.
Right.
And so to have mastery over your instrument, which is what I think any serious artist has. I don't care if you're the fourth violinist in the New York Philharmonic, or you're a dancer, or you're playing lead guitar for fucking U2. You've mastered that instrument. They've been working on that. I mean, Jesus Christ, Bruce Springsteen picked up a guitar at 9.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about acting is your instrument is your entire being. You better master it. And I just don't think enough actors understand that that's really what separates the good from the bad, is like having complete mastery over the instrument that you're using to create.
Well, I love that word being, that it's your whole being, because you can talk about the elements, you can break it down, like your physical life, your vocal life, your ability to remain open and vulnerable and in contact, your ability to access your imagination in order to particularize things.
Yeah.
But talk about how that all comes together. Like when you say your whole being, it's more than that. It's more than that stuff.
Well, I mean, it starts with the imagination. I mean, I think that's the most important part of your creative instrument, is your imagination. But the job of the actor is to create behavior. So how are you gonna do it? How are you gonna create behavior? And you need a body. And the actors that I train, certainly actors that want to do this in their life, you're not aspiring to extra work. You're not aspiring to 2 lines on Gossip Girl. You want to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the call sheet. You want to be able to strap a play on your back. You want to play rich, complicated people,
right,
with deep emotional lives that are complex, that are living through things. Well, you think about if you look at your life, right, and ask yourself, what are the 4 or 5 most searing memories that I have? Good or bad, right? The joys, the triumphs, the tragedies, right? The heartbreaks, the euphoric, triumphant moments. What, maybe 4 or 5 in a lifetime?
Yeah.
Right. Well, an actor's got to do that 8 shows a week, is doing that, 4 or 5 times a week with an audition, is doing it on 15 takes. So what an actor's got to live through, most people have only experienced 4 or 5 times in their life. That's why we go to the theater. That's why we take in art. It's to live vicariously. So You better be able to function from your grief, your heartbreak, your joy, your silliness, your shame, your rage. You better be comfortable with conflict, comfortable with intimacy. So, you know, you've been parented, educated, and socialized for however many decades you've walked the earth. And now you're saying, oh, I want to be an actor. And now you're going to try to strip all of that away to get back to the child in you, that curious, open, playful child that doesn't give a fuck. It's willing to make mistakes. It's willing to make an ass out of themselves. That is not easy.
No, it's not.
But that's the courageous work. That's the courageous work.
Yeah, right. And what I found for myself too, that I had to really come to grips with when I see in a lot of other actors, is there's so much of that in our lives that we're embarrassed by.
Yeah.
Consciously or unconsciously. And you got to be fearless about showing those things without,
you got to be willing to make an ass out of yourself. That's exactly right. You got to be willing to make an ass out of yourself. And that's why you're returning to the childlike, you're returning to that child in you. You know, Picasso's got that famous quote, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once you've grown up.
Right.
You know, but to get back to being curious and open. And, you know, you're taught your whole life, think before you speak, choose your words wisely, don't rock the boat, don't be an asshole, be polite, watch yourself, mind your manners. Not to mention, please, not to mention the women with the sexism and the misogyny, people of color, you know, certainly my Black actors that have never felt comfortable being able to express anger, to be able to, for real life reasons. I mean, all this stuff gets unpacked. You know, and I say to them, if you didn't want to be an actor, none of this would be important. You know, your life, you've developed a way of living through life and that's really effective for you. But you want to act. You're saying you want to act. So then you have to do the hard work of unpacking all of that stuff so that you can function with empathy and vulnerability and your humanity.
Yeah.
That's what the Meisner work does.
And Bill, I remember one of the things he said that really struck me was that actors are athletes of the human heart.
Oh yeah,
you know,
100%. Acrobats, you know,
and because that encompasses all the work you got to do and the 100%. Place you got to come from, and you can't have any judgment about it. You know, you've got to be able to act with with a kind of innocence.
Yeah.
You know,
but most people think, oh, acting, I could do it.
Right.
And what the part of the you know, what's offensive about all of that is it really is the only art form where you don't have to train in order to be able to call yourself an actor and actually be able to make money and have a career. Like you can make money, have a career, never train a day in your fucking life, and make money.
Right.
You can't do that with dance. You can't do it with music, you know? So that's why everybody thinks they can do it. And when you look at great acting, it's so effortless. There's such ease, there's such grace, there's such simplicity that the virtuosity isn't as apparent as watching, you know, Anna Netrebko sing an aria or watch Sadie and Glover tap dance. You know, I mean, it's like you look at that and you go, I could never do that.
Yeah.
And so you say you want to be an actor? Great, give it a shot. Go ahead. Come on up here.
Best acting, the acting is invisible.
That's right. You never see him. You never see the best actors act.
No, and they put so much work into it, but they leave it at the door. They leave it at the door.
What's great now? There's so much content out there now. Like you can watch really great actors sit around and talk about their craft, or listen to a great podcast, or listen to really great actors talk about what they do. They toil, they sweat, they have deep insecurity. They're terrified of failure. They're worried, can I pull this off? The hard work, the obsessiveness that goes into it, and then they're able to do all that work and then leave themselves alone and improvise and go about what they have to do. I mean, all great trained actors say the same things in different ways. Yeah.
The guy that I work with who owns the studio, when he works with actors, his approach is to focus on the discovery. You know, that everything is a discovery, every moment's a discovery. And that if you can't act from discovery, from a place of discovery, then you can't act.
No,
you
that's
know,
right.
like,
I would say that as well. I say you've got to be surprised in every moment. You've got to hear for the first time. Your job is to go from unanticipated moment to unanticipated moment.
right. Yeah.
Well,
Can
when
you,
you
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, but that's just hard to do when you're like, you're even in training and you're doing an exercise and you're coming to the door 5 times and you've seen this person doing this now for the last 20 minutes, to come to the door every time and see it afresh, to see it anew, to be taken aback, to be startled.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things too that I wanted to get your point of view about is, like, in a lot of ways, I thought about Meisner as, because a lot of people sort of take a scene, they mark it out. Here's how the moments are supposed to look. This is what, like, this moment's supposed to be, feel like this. It's intense, and intensity means anger or volume or whatever it is.
Yep.
And it's always that way, right? This is how the scene's supposed to look. And they don't have the faith in the writer, really, that if I do things like particularize the acting relationships, the given circumstances, all the elements you need in order to walk into a scene and do it, that if you've done that homework and then you play moment to moment, the scene will happen the way it needs to.
100%.
It just will. And you can play the same action, right? But it's going to look different every night, based on what this person gives me.
That's right. Absolutely. That's how you can do 8 shows a week. You do 15 takes, you do the homework, but the real, I think the next level, like when you really put the work together, is when you can do all that work and then leave yourself alone, not worry about it, trust that the other person will extrovert that from you. Because a lot of times what happens is actors do homework and then they do their homework at the other person. And so what you see are just actors acting at each other. There's no taking in. That's right. There's no taking in. There's nothing experientially happening. So the ultimate level of this art form is when you can do this kind of hard, detailed, personal, specific crafting and plant the entire performance inside you. Then leave yourself alone, put your attention on the other person, and go from unanticipated moment to unanticipated moment, and trust that the truth of the moment trumps everything, and be willing to let things that you thought you were going to do go for the sake of the moment. Then it's vital. It's happening right there. I'm not watching last night's leftovers. I'm seeing, right? I'm seeing this unfold in front of me for the first time ever.
From your point of view, can you give me an example of, like, just hypothetical example, a bad actor approaching a scene, like trying to show their homework or whatever it is?
Well, versus... I think the bad actor is just going to try to memorize their lines and practice their lines out loud and do line readings. And this is how I'm going to say my line. That's the worst kind of acting. Memorizing your lines, how you want to say them, practicing your lines out loud, looking in a mirror, and figuring out where I want to emote, and manipulating yourself and squeezing out and pushing out. This, that kind of amateurish hack, that's the worst. It's the worst. The best is incredibly vivid, specific, and it's done with real clarity, real grace, and precision. But that's somebody who's working at the top of their game, man. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult. But most acting is bad, don't you think? I mean, I just think most acting is bad, or it's general.
Yeah. Well,
most actors get by on conversational reality, and most actors think that that's all that they need to have. And when you look at really bad, I mean, like, Jesus, go turn on the Lifetime television channel and just anything on there at any given time, and what you'll see are beautiful people that can talk. But there's nothing going on.
Right. They sound like they're having a real conversation, but it's
just conversation. But that's not acting. You know what I mean? And that they'll never be able to do anything other than that. And so young actors can get confused, especially if they think, oh, I want to be a film actor. I want to be a TV actor, that all you got to do is memorize your lines and be able to talk. Nah, you're not going to sustain a career. And the only people that get away with that are the beautiful people, the people that walk into a casting office and it's just universally accepted that everybody in this room wants to fuck you because you're gorgeous.
Right.
They don't care how you fucking act. Just say the fucking lines. But I just don't think that's what you want to base a career on.
Oh,
Is, you know what I mean?
no.
So, I say to them, you got to have a vision of the type of actor you want to be.
Yeah, that's a big deal because most people don't.
No. People that come to this training, they know they want to be an actor. They have this idea about being an actor, but they have absolutely no idea what that means.
No.
Right? We were
No.
clueless. I mean, we knew we wanted to be
Yeah.
actors, but we didn't know we were getting ourselves into.
No.
Diving into Meisner's work, we didn't know what it was like. When those classes started to unfold, we were getting our world rocked.
Yeah.
And everything
We
I
had
thought
to
about
really
acting
learn.
at 28, yeah, I was 28 when we started.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I got my BA. I've been tooling around New York for 5 years. Like I'm going to go to Rutgers just to get my MFA and just so I have it. But I'll take the class. I'll be fine. No, you realize how much you don't understand.
You don't even,
And it
one of
was
the
a
first things.
humbling.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I had to learn to admit and really work on was like, I had no idea what the truth of the moment was. I had no idea what a truthful impulse was.
No, to be fully present and out of your head and like what that means to be able to work off another human being. No.
And real honesty, what real honesty really
right.
means.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about too, just because I also work with, I also teach Chekhov exercises, Michael Chekhov exercises. Beautiful stuff.
Beautiful. Cool.
How do you see, I'm starting to get some ideas about how, some more specific ideas about how the two augment each other, how they can work together.
They complement each other perfectly.
Yeah. Can you talk about, from your point of view, how they do and how they can work together?
This is the best analogy I can give. What I do, what Meisner does, what you get in 2 years with me is first year, we're going to build the foundation. We're going to pour the concrete. We're going to lay the foundation. Second year, we're going to build the house.
Right.
What Chekhov work allows you to do is furnish the house, hang the drapes, put the furniture in there. Do you know what I mean? It's all the little things that are going to help complement what you've got fundamentally with Meisner.
Yeah.
And it's all imagination, man. It's nothing it's just as in Meisner. There's nothing intellectual about Chekhov's work.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's all, in truth, what really all that work are just your imagination, particularizations, as ifs, acting things out that'll help you create absolutely vivid behavior. Is to do it with the body and not think about it. And I just think Chekhov is incredible. It's such a great, when you have something like that can be added to just the fundamental basics that you get with Meisner, because that's what Meisner gives you. It gives you the fundamental basics of how to work. First year is all about fundamentals, so it's not anything in depth. It's the bare bone fundamentals. Second year, you're just learning how to break down a script, carve out actions, right? Justify text, create impulses, and plant meetings, standard stuff in terms of approaching character. But it's stuff like Chekhov. It's like doing clown work. It's all those other things that, like I say, furnishes the house.
Yeah.
So I tell my students, I'm only taking you so far. And then you're going to have to figure out, okay, you want to do classical work, then you need to go study Shakespeare. You need to study language. You need to take stuff like Chekhov. You should do a clown class.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is this idea of fundamentals. Like, there's a lot of people that think they already know them, but even if they don't think they already know them, one of the things let me say this. One of the things that I've always felt is that, particularly in the first year, it's not like that the concepts are mind-blowing. I mean, we have an idea about these things, about what acting requires and the elements that need to be there. But what's brilliant about those exercises and about the technique is, okay, great, but how do you practice it? How do you actually practice it? How do you, it's one thing to say, well, you need to be in the moment. You need to get out of your head. Okay, great. So how do I do that?
That's why Meisner's brilliant. He has a way of doing that. He has an exercise that he's created to instill in you the fundamentals of acting. And you do it over and over and over and over again. You do it twice a week in class. You do it 2 rehearsals a week, every week for 9 months. It gets ingrained in you.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what he gives you. It gives you a technique.
Right.
Any art form needs one.
Yeah.
Every art form, once you have technique, and it does sports, you pick it. Once you master the fundamentals and you have a way of working, then your talent can soar right through the technique.
Right.
It needs form. You need form for your talent. Otherwise, it's just a crapshoot. And so what happens is most actors, they bullshit their way through something, and all of a sudden they have like a moment on stage or on film that was just incredible. Like, oh my God, I was alive. That was so incredible. They have no idea how they did it. They have no idea what it meant, and they have no idea how to do it again.
Right.
It was this ethereal thing that happened, and they go, wow, that was incredible. They don't know how it happened.
Yeah, and you got to be able to do it again.
Yes, and when you train, that's just how you work, experientially alive in the moment and present, because I'm a fucking artist, motherfucker.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, I could talk, we need to do, I have to teach. I have a 6 o'clock class. I have to go.
I've loved talking to you.
Listen, man, I mean, let's keep doing this. You can record any, we can keep talking, man. I don't know.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank you, Charlie.
In half an hour, this is 45. It's not enough time, man.
Yeah.
I love shooting the shit.
It was wonderful seeing you, Charlie.
It's wonderful seeing you too, man. And thank you. And so listen, I mean this. Let's do another talk.
Yeah, we'll do a series.
I'm serious, man. I love it. And I don't get a chance to talk to somebody that's on the same level as me. When it comes to this art form, I'm dealing with students who don't know anything. So to talk to somebody who's like also a master of the art form, and a good friend and someone I love, it's great.
Love you, man.
Likewise. Let's do it again.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Bye.